guys, and obviously a big video for you guys today. There have been a ton of WWE releases announced. Um, Yesterday they were announced. So the names that have been released this time round. So we have Katana Chance and Hayden Harter. Two names that obviously formerly of NXT came up to WWE. They have had a run with the women's tag belts, I believe. They've not done much as of late, so the fact that they've been released, not too much of a shock. Hotel High has been released from WWE for the second time. Obviously, a big part of Damage Control, originally alongside Bailey and Io Sky, and then obviously Oscar and High rejoined. Obviously, I mean that's a bit to me. That is a bit of a shock. The fact they've actually released him, like they've actually released her. I can't believe that they've done that again, like for the second time. It's like, where does Hotel High go next? Does she go to Impact Wrestling? Does she go to AEW? Who knows? One of the other names that has been released is Braun Strowman. Now, Braun Strowman, again, an interesting name within the latest batch of releases, obviously was brought back to WWE by Triple H in 2022 after he was released by Vince McMahon the year before in 2021, and obviously he's now been released again. This is the second time he's been released. And it's that question of, where does he go next? Will it be AEW? Will it be Impact Wrestling? I mean, I definitely see Braun Strowman going to AEW. I mean, it would be crazy if he did that. I think, at one point when he was released by WWE, originally by Vince McMahon, I did think he would sign for, Impact Wrestling or AEW, but that didn't happen. Obviously, he ended up being brought back to WWE. I actually thought they were going to have him do something with the Wyatt Six, but obviously they didn't, and they have let him go. We also know that Shayna Baszler has been released as well. This is an interesting one. Because obviously they basically released Sonya Deville not too long ago, and now they've released Shayna Baszler. So that basically means that Pure Fusion Collective is no more. That faction is basically done because both Sonya Deville and Shayna Baszler are gone from WWE. And it's like that question now of, what do they do with Zoe Stark? Where do they go with her? What do they do with her now that both Shayna Baszler and Sonya Deville have been released, and obviously now that Pure Fusion Collective as a faction is no more? It's like, what do they do with her now? Where are they gonna go with her? What plans do they actually have for Zoe Stark now that those two names, obviously Shayna Baszler and Sonya Deville, are now gone from WWE? There's also been a few names from NXT released as well. So Oro Mensah has been released. Gallus have been released as well. That was one name I'm quite shocked about, the fact they've released Gallus. As Gallus, I feel like they're one of the best factions on NXT. So the fact that WWE have released them, is a bit of a shocker there. Horror Jade has been released as well by WWE. That is a huge one there, the fact that they've released Horror Jade from her contract. It's also been confirmed that Hara Jackson has been released as well, alongside Eddie Thorpe and Gigi Dolan. They have also been released as well. Now, Eddie Thorpe, I mean, this is really a shock, to be honest, with Eddie Thorpe. I mean, I'm quite shocked about the fact that they've released Gigi Dolan from that contract. I mean, obviously, there are some names in there that you're thinking, well, why have WWE released them? What was the reasoning? This is what I think a lot of people be questioning now, like, what was the reasoning behind a lot of these releases from WWE? Was it a contractual thing? And like, was it a financial thing? Is that what it was? I don't know. I do kind of feel gutted for Braun Strowman and High that they've been released again from WWE for the second time. Like, that must hurt, for them, the fact that they were released once, by Vince McMahon. Triple H has brought them back and he's now released them, a bit like they've been released again. Like, that must really suck for them to obviously be, released from the same promotion twice. A bit like Eva Marie, she was released from WWE once, she was brought back and released again. They brought John Morrison back and then released him. So it's kind of sad, really, for when that happens. Obviously, when a wrestler is released and then they're then brought back, only to then be released again, which has happened a few times now. Obviously, Emma was brought back by Triple H and has ended up being released. Tegan Knox was brought back by Triple H and he was released. Well, she was released as well. It's just a crazy thing, really. And you're thinking about it, you're sort of looking at it and you're thinking, well, why did Triple H bring these people back to the promotion if he had no plans of actually utilising them in any sort of meaningful way? Because this is the thing, like, Emma and Tegan Knox were brought back to WWE and they weren't used. They were never involved in any major storylines. They weren't, they weren't like favourites to become, they weren't considered favourites to become either the SmackDown or Raw Women's Champion or anything like that. It's like, why did he bring them back? And it's the same with Braun Strowman. Apart from that kind of feud that he had with Bronson Reed last year, like, what else has Braun done? Yeah, his matches with Jake Fatu on SmackDown were pretty decent, but he's not done anything, like, particularly noteworthy. How many matches has he had, PLE matches, has Braun Strowman actually had since his return? I don't think he's hardly had any matches on PLE. He wasn't. I don't think he was involved in WrestleMania 30 in WrestleMania 38. I don't think he was involved in WrestleMania 30. Well, actually, no, I think he was. But what was didn't he face Omos at one point at WrestleMania? I can't remember. But I know he wasn't involved in WrestleMania 40 last year. He wasn't involved in WrestleMania this year at all. So it's like, well, what are you gonna do? Obviously, Hyder, like, why would you release her? She was a big part of Damage Control. Obviously, it's a huge shot. Um, I mean, I don't know that I'm too surprised by the releases of Atana Chance of Hayden Harder. I think, those releases at one point felt inevitable. And I kind of thought that I had a funny, I don't know why, but I'd had a funny feeling for a little while that Shayna Baszler was going to end up being released from her contract this year by WWE at some point. I didn't think that, she was going to see the year out with WWE. I thought that she would be released before the year was done. And I guess I've been proven right on that because, Shayna Baszler has been released. Obviously, the second member of Pure Fusion Collective to basically be released from their contract. Obviously, we know that with Sonya Deville, they basically said that they wouldn't be renewing her contract when it expired. So, that's as good as technically saying, well, she has been released from her contract, and there you go. It's just crazy. We know that obviously Indy Hartwell has signed with Impact Wrestling recently, so that's kind of a huge signing for them. Obviously, hopefully she does better. She does well on that in Impact Wrestling, and hopefully she does better than she did in WWE. Obviously, it's sad that, for these wrestlers, obviously, that, the store has closed for them, but, as one door closes for them, another door will be open, another door opens, hopefully a lot of these wrestlers will go on to bigger and better things. This is the thing, right? You look at a lot of wrestlers that have been released by WWE. There are a lot of wrestlers who have actually been more successful in other promotions than they ever were in WWE. Like, that's the funniest thing about it, is that so many other wrestlers have been booked better, used better, than they were in WWE, and that's a good thing, At least it had their, them signing for another promotion has worked out for them. There have been other wrestlers who have signed for, another promotion, and that hasn't worked out quite so well for them. Malachi Black and Miro, they signed for WWE, they signed for AEW, and that didn't really go too well for them. And obviously, they ended up coming back to WWE this year. Obviously, Miro returned on the Raw after WrestleMania. We had Aleister Black's debut last Friday. So yeah, it's been an interesting time, and I mean, obviously, I'm excited to see what's next for big names like Dakota High and Braun Strowman. I'll be interested to see what's next for Dallas. I don't know why, but I'm kind of feeling a little bit salty about the fact that they've released Dallas. I mean, to be honest, I like Dallas. I thought, they were one of like the best factions that we actually had on NXT. And they were one of the strongest factions we had on NXT, and I just feel like WWE, there was no need for WWE to actually release them. I certainly, that's not a decision that I certainly would have made. I certainly feel like there are other wrestlers who deserve to be released way more than they did. I feel like they didn't deserve that. This is the thing. Dallas were a team that or a faction I felt they didn't deserve to be released by WWE. I think that's a bit of a big mistake. That I think WWE made a huge mistake there with releasing them. I mean, with regards to the other NXT names that have been released, I'm not too bothered. I mean, Eddie Thorpe maybe was another bit of a mistake there. I mean, Eddie Thorpe wasn't that bad. I mean, he was pretty decent. He had some pretty decent matches. So, a bit of a shot at it. He's been released. It's just crazy. Like this, that's what happens though sometimes with WWE. You see, sometimes you do see names that being released that you would at least expect to be released. You're not, you don't, sometimes you see names that you're not always expecting to be released beat up from their contracts. That's how it is sometimes. I was originally quite shocked when the news came out back in 2021 that Vince McMahon had released Braun Strowman. I was like, what the fuck is Vince McMahon doing? First I think he'd released Bray and then he'd released Braun. Or was it the other way around? He released Braun and then released Bray. I can't remember. But I was like, what the fuck is he doing? And I kind of think that now. I'm kind of thinking that now. I'm looking at Triple H and I'm thinking, what the fuck is he doing? Why the fuck has he released Braun Strowman? It's like, what the hell is he playing at? Like, releasing like names like Braun Strowman and Dakota High, I just feel like that's pure stupidity at its very best. But it is what it is. There are some names that fans might not be happy about. Am I surprised that Shayna Baszler being released? No, I'm not surprised at her being released. I kind of felt like Vince were heading that way. That's a sad thing though. That's the saddest thing really. Is the thing is that I kind of feel like we've been heading towards Shayna Baszler being released from WWE and up from her WWE contract for quite a while now. I think it felt like it was one of those things that felt practically inevitable. Like it was one of those things that felt like it was always going to happen at some point. We just didn't know exactly when it was going to happen. And the fact that she's now the second member of Pure Fusion Collective to have been released within the first 5 months of the year is just crazy. I mean, we've had Sonya Deville gone, now Shayna Baszler's gone. Is Zoe Stark gonna be next? I'm looking at Zoe's start and I'm just thinking, like, what can they do with her? What will they do with her? What will they, have they got any plans for what they're going to do with her now that they've kind of completed, they basically, gotten, obviously that Pure Fusion Collective is done, where do they go with her? What direction do they go with her? You know, it is gonna be very interesting to see what they do with Zoe Stark over the next kind of several months and how she's booked by WWE now that she's not working. Obviously, now that she's not doing the Pure Fusion Elective thing anymore. It's like, what are they gonna do with her now? How are they gonna book her now? You know what I mean? Um, I mean. It's always gutting when you see a wrestler that's been brought back end up being released again. Like you're looking and you're thinking, well, what was the point in that wrestler even being brought back? Because they were just going to end up being released again. Like it's just a crazy situation, and I do feel sorry for all of these names that were released by WWE within this latest batch of releases that were announced yesterday. Um, obviously, no one. It's never nice for someone to lose their, when someone loses their job. But unfortunately, it is what it is. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you for another one soon. Bye bye.